Nick Angstadt with the Locked On NBA here, and I'm joined by the one and only Tony East of Locked On Pacers. Tony, at the end of the season, I mean, how are you feeling about this Pacers team? Like, it's just been
Like many people, everybody's just like, oh, the season's almost over. You know what I mean? It's just been a drag, and there's been so much non-basketball stuff involved in the season that's made it so difficult for every team. But for the teams that don't have an awesome record, that just makes it such a drag. So to be in the play-in tournament too, a new thing, is kind of fun and exciting. But when you're 33 and 37, it's just you're dragging your feet along.
Would you almost rather be like the Thunder at this point?
No, I am very anti-tanking as a belief. Like, it's smart and teams should do it
Right.
if it behooves them, but no, I would not rather be the Thunder.
I get you. All right, let's get into the Indiana Pacers. So the who's going to be in the playoff rotation? I mean, players have been in and out of this lineup. I mean, the other night I checked in, and TJ McConnell was like the only ball handler that was playing for him. Karis LeVert's been in and out, all that kind of stuff. Gogo Batazzi is on the coach's bad side, apparently. Who's going to be in this rotation, and which role players are the ones that really are going to step up and need to play well if they're going to get out of the play-in?
Yeah, you're right that the answer to the who's in the rotation question might be impossible to answer. Fully healthy, I think it's the guys you'd expect: Brogdon, LeVert, Justin Holiday, Turner Sabonis, McDermott, McConnell, Edmund Sumner, and then there probably O'Shea Brissett is the ninth guy, but that could go a number of ways. But Nate Bjorkgren has done so many lineups this season, and some of that is because he's had to because of these injuries, and some of that's because he's a little bit of a tinkerer. So as we approach the play-in, I would say those would be the 9 guys, and there's a chance that some of them come back. But Miles Turner yesterday announcing that he's still week to week, so I doubt he'll be ready for any sort of play-in action. Malcolm Brogdon pops up with injuries all the time. In their last game, McConnell, Brissett, and Sabonis all suffered an injury in the game. So I don't know who's going to be healthy. Me and you could be suiting up for the Pacers in the play-in game with the way things are going for them. It seems like the only lock will be Justin Holiday, because that dude has not missed a game since he joined the Pacers. But if I had to guess based on who's been questionable and trending in the right directions, I would say Brogdon and LeVert and Sabonis will all be out there. And then they'll probably start Brissett and Justin Holiday, and that'll be their starting 5. And then McConnell and Sumner and McDermott can be – that's 8. That's close to a rotation. So it depends who's healthy for that night spot. If Jeremy Lamb's back, maybe he'll get it. But if not, maybe Goga. But it's hard to say with their health status who's even going to be available for a play-in game, and that makes it really hard to project a rotation.
So I'm going to just take a wild leap here and say that their biggest weakness is just availability and just guys that are going to play. But is there anything basketball-wise you stand out as biggest weakness, and then you can go into like their biggest strength as a team when they're actually playing?
Yeah, since the reports about their coaching turmoil and the Bitadze spat with Greg Foster, they've actually been playing pretty well. So their biggest weakness recently has been that health. Jakar Sampson was asked after the game they just had against the Bucks. They played really well. They just happened to lose. He asked, the TV's crew said, what do they need to do well in the play-in and the playoffs? He said health, right? He didn't even mention a basketball topic. But on the court, defense has been their biggest problem all season. Sometimes they have really nice defensive games. They just held Philly to under 100 in regulation a few days ago. Only gave up 32 points in the whole second half that game. They looked really good on defense that game. They also gave up over 150 points to the Wizards like a week before that. So they're really inconsistent on defense. They try a lot of gimmicky defenses that they suck, to be frank, and they keep them for too long. So I think their defense is definitely their biggest weakness. And if they end up playing the Wizards again, it could really matter because they struggle with guards, and Russ and Beal would just tear them apart. So depending on their opponent, their defense will definitely be the biggest weakness for them.
Yeah, and then what's at stake for this team? I mean, it seems like everything's just up in the air. I mean, the rumors of the coach leaving after this season. What happens if they lose in the play-in? And what happens if, I don't know, they win and they like win a round? Like, what would happen to this team? Who would stay? Who would go?
Yeah, it's a weird crossroads, right? Because before the season, they kept basically the exact same roster from last season to this season. It's like a historic amount of continuity from roster to roster. And so when I would ask Kevin Pritchard, the president of basketball operations, about continuity, he would say, you look at teams who've won a championship, they've done one of two things. They've made a big move, or they've had a lot of continuity. And the Pacers went the continuity route, and it's not working at all, right? They're, again, 33 and 37. They might make the 7-8 game if things go well for them this weekend, but they might finish outside the top 8 in their own conference. That's not where you want to be when you claim that, when you start a sentence about team building with teams that have won a championship, and then you're out of the playoffs. That doesn't really add up. So the roster is at stake in that. I think they've realized the limits and flaws of this roster as constructed. They just traded Oladipo. The court is shifting this season, so who knows what even could be on the team next year. The 2-center experiment has been going on for a very long time and has not shown any meaningful results. So maybe the Sabonis-Turner pairing comes to an end with the roster. Basically, I would say LeVert and one of the centers are safe, and everyone else, I could see some maybe future change there. And yeah, you brought up the coaching stuff. Bjorkgren's tenure has not gone well. The record is bad. The communication off the court is bad. Rubbing wrong with assistants, staffers, and players. That's everybody. That's everybody.
Fans, right? Like the last one is fans.
Yeah,
right?
He's very good with media. He is very nice to us.
Good with media. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, a lot could change for the Pacers, but at the same time, they're probably going to have to do a lot of reflecting in the mirror, because if they do end up moving on from Bjorkgren, a 1-year experiment just is a terrible look for your hiring process and your organization in general. So I could see like minimal changes and just trying it with a new, more established coach. I could also see a huge teardown and a totally different looking Pacers team this season. So how much does the plan affect them? I would say not very much. Even if they win around, I think they kind of know what this team is.
And it's probably got to be hard to look down to Atlanta and say Nate McMillan, right? Like the Hawks have had the best record in the East since he took over. I mean, that is just a stark contrast to where the Pacers went with their coach, and then now the Hawks went with their coach.
Yeah, that's a weird story, because the head coach, Nate McMillan, and Kevin Pritchard are really good friends. They've been together through 2 organizations, Portland and Indiana. So they're really tight. So that is, that firing is really hard beyond basketball reasons for the Pacers to do. So you knew that they were sure it was the right move, right? And Kevin Pritchard and Nate McMillan have both kind of said to an extent before McMillan's last season, they discussed, hey, Nate, if you can't get this team out of the first round, maybe you're not the right coach for the job. And McMillan agreed with that, right? And then Sabonis was hurt, so it's probably not totally fair, but they didn't get out of the first round. So they moved on from him, and he kind of was resigned to that fact. That said, clearly he's a better coach than Nate Bjorkgren was for the roster they have. So that is also a factor in looking in the mirror at their hiring processes.
It's a classic, well, we can move on from this coach, but who are you getting? Who are you bringing in that's actually going to replace him? So what's the most prevalent national narrative that you think is wrong or misunderstood? So people talk about, I mean, right now the big thing is the coach. The coach sucks. The players hate the coach. Maybe it's the narrative that it was the head coach that got into it with Goga Batasi instead of an assistant coach. I mean, what's something with, I don't know, Sabonis or somebody that's a narrative that you hear that you're like, that's not right.
The thing I came armed with is just that, the Pacers haven't been fun to watch. It's just they haven't been watched a lot, and I think a lot of narrative around them falls back on what they used to be, right? This really tough defensive team that punches you on the glass and is, you got to work to score.
What was that, blue collar, gold swagger? What
was
their
exactly. that Dan Burke, the assistant coach who was in charge of their defense, has also gone on top of Nate McMillan. So I would say beyond the things you just mentioned, the most prevalent national narrative that's incorrect is they're not that kind of Pacers anymore. They play so fast, first in the league in pace, and their defense is not very good. They play totally different, like unrecognizable team from last year. But to the things that you said, yeah, it was not Nate Bjorkgren that got in the fight with Goga Batadze. It was a different bald coach who happens to be a foot and a half taller than Bjorkgren. So I don't understand the confusion there. I guess if you don't follow the team, you wouldn't understand that. And Sabonis is an interesting one because he's an all-star. He's really good, has a lot of skills. And I'm glad you brought him up because I considered using him here because I think he is wrongly rated, but not over or underrated, if that makes any sense. Like if you just watch the Pacers, you probably overrate him. And if you just watch you probably underrate him. But if you just watch the box score, you probably overrate him. So no one really has the perfect level of how good he is. That said, in the last about 3 weeks, he has been unbelievably good and easily the best player on the team, which is a good time to be peaking for an all-star. So there's a lot of stuff that people don't really know about the Pacers because they just play so differently and have had so many lineups and guys in and out that it's hard to assess what they are and what they can be in a best of one situation.
You said he's been the best player on the team. Has Brogdon been the other guy that has been like they go back and forth as who the best player on the team is? Because that's kind of a rare thing to not know exactly who the best player on your team is necessarily.
Yeah, usually I leaned Brogdon this season, and then he had a rough stretch in February and then got hurt. And then when he came back from his injury, he was really good again. Now he's hurt again. And since, let's say, April 20th or something, Sabonis has been the best player on the team, although Karis LeVert is trying to enter that conversation. Some crazy assist games and scoring games, 2 or 3 daggers, and he's just been so good in the clutch for them. So those three have all, I guess, taken their turn being the best player on the team. But yeah, Sabonis and Brogdon usually split it, and they play off of each other really well. So if they're both healthy for a play-in game, then they're both really good, and they'll be hard to stop.
That Oladipo-LeVert trade looking pretty good for the Indiana Pacers at this point.
Yes, it is.
Tony East with Locked On Pacers. Go listen to their show, and we will see them in the play-in. We'll see what happens with them.